It was a huge risk for me to start my own business, but it did allow me the flexibility to be there for my family and build something that now has become a great career for me. But I think if I had in mind, I need to have these boundaries, I need to put first things first, regardless of what career it was, if it was in accounting or finance, or if it was the school choice policy work I'm doing now. What's important is not necessarily what that other thing is that God has for you to use your talents in, but that you maintain those first priorities of your family, your husband, and your children, and you keep that career, whatever that is, in its right level of priority. God will take that and he will make you successful in it so long as you have those other priorities in place and you're not allowing it to overtake them.
Welcome back to Gen Z Unplugged. We are tuning in from the 2025 College Women's Summit in Scottsdale, Arizona. Today we have an interview for you from Erika Donalds, who is the founder and chairman of OptimaEd and the chair of the America First Policy Institute's Center for Education Opportunity. Erika is a national expert in education, a fierce advocate for school choice, and she is also married to Representative Byron Donalds of Florida. So here is our interview with Erika.
Miss Erika, thank you so much for joining Gen Z Unplugged. I am so excited to interview specifically today. I've heard so many wonderful things about you. I wasn't able to hear your speech, but I'm really excited to go back and listen to it and see all the incredible work that you're doing. Explain to my listeners a little bit of your story, your background, because obviously they see you in the fight for education freedom and school choice. Talk a little bit about what really sparked, that fire in you to fight for education freedom. Maybe a little bit of how you met Representative Byron Donalds and how you're here today.
Well, that's a lot of what I talk about, especially when I talk to young women. How did I get here, and the struggles really that I went through to get where I am today, and how God really helped to get me through and get me on the right track so I can prioritize the things that are important in my life, like my husband and my children. And education freedom and the work that I do in education policy is kind of weaved into all of that story. See, I was in financial services for 20 years. Byron and I met in college. He was a finance major. I was an accounting major. Our whole goal was just not to be poor, because that's where we both came from. And education was our ticket out. And we used that to have some very successful careers in finance before we got involved in politics. But when it came to education, we had 3 boys. We moved into an area where we thought this is where the kids need to go to school, because that's what the state says. It's an A school district. Mm-hmm. But our middle child really struggled and hated going to school, crying every day. It was absolutely miserable. They wanted us to put him on medication, and we refused. We pulled him out and put him into a private school, which we could barely afford at the time. But he was a different kid after that. When I picked him up from the first day at his classical Christian school, he jumps in the car with the biggest smile on his face. And he's like, "Mom, did you know about the Crusades?" And he just could not wait every day to tell me everything that he had learned. And he started loving going to school. And I thought, how many other Darrens are out there whose parents are probably listening to the experts, maybe putting them on medication, or just accepting that that's the way it is, that the kids are not going to love school when there are other options out there. And that's what sparked my motivation to work in school choice and fight for education freedom, leave my high-flying finance career and start a nonprofit, and then a virtual reality school, which is bringing education options to families in 17 states now. And yeah, that's why I've dedicated my life to this, because of my son, my experience, and now hearing from so many other families whose lives are changed by school choice.
I think a lot of our listeners probably don't really have any idea of what school choice is or why it matters. So, with your background in it, you're essentially an expert. So we would love to hear your overview of what school choice really is.
Yeah, a lot of people think of neighborhood schools. You move into a zip code so that your child can attend the school that they're zoned for. And that's 90% of students in our country. School choice says that it doesn't depend on your zip code. Parents should be able to get the money that the state would otherwise spend on your child and send to that neighborhood school. And you as a parent should take that money and say, I want my child to go to a private school. I want to use this money for online courses. I want to homeschool. I want part and part, right? Hybrid schools that are now popping up, micro schools all over the country. But I'm going to customize my child's education to what I see fit for my son or my daughter. That is ultimately what we used to refer to as school choice, but now education freedom is really the ability to take those funds and have the agency and the information to build an academic program that is going to work best for your child. Maybe your son or daughter is really great at reading and they're just going to devour books and learn on their own about classic literature and grammar, but they struggle in math, and you want to send them to a tutoring center where they're going to work in a small group to really learn the math basics and the foundations of it. Why shouldn't I be able to take the funding that's for my child's education and spend it the way that's really going to work for my child the best? We are able to customize everything else in our lives. I mean, you guys are Gen Z, so you obviously, that is your generation. And it should be our expectation for education as well, but we are stuck in the dark ages because of the monopoly that controls our education system. And it's not working. Only 1 in 3 kids are proficient in reading and math. So it's unacceptable. We shouldn't do it that way anymore. We should change it. And free market, to me, is the answer to that.
Now, do any of your boys go to public school?
They have in the past. None of them do now. And I've said from the podium today that I would not send them to public school now. I don't trust the public school system. And I've tried that, been there, done that. I just believe that we need competition. And my son now all of my kids have either gone to public, private, charter, homeschool, online school. We've done everything. And it just depends on where they are in their academic journey. It doesn't have to be the same for even one family. And it wasn't for me. All of my boys did something different.
Yeah. And I think you hear so many criticisms of school choice when it really doesn't make any sense. We actually the Lou Center did a poll, and we found that just a vast majority, I think it was like 88% or something, of young women say that they think we should have the choice of where we send our kids to school. But then when you put the school choice label on it, oh, no, thank you, I don't want to do that anymore. So how do you address those criticisms like, oh, it'll draw funding away, it's not really choice for people who can't afford an alternative? What do you say to that?
Yeah, you're right that the polling shows that people want options. And maybe you have to say it differently because they've demonized these terms, school choice, that it drains public funding from the education system, or it's going to harm students that are left in public education. But people support their own ability to make choices for their own kids. And that is a 90% issue. If it's your child, I don't care if you are a teachers union representative who's ultimately against all forms of school choice. Teachers are actually the highest proportion of people who opt out of the public school system. Public school teachers, they send their children to charter schools and private school at a higher rate than any other group in the population. So people want options for their own children. They recognize that. How we maintain the right vernacular for polling and whatnot, it does matter, because when you're advocating, you need that public support for the policy changes that we want to make, and we're working through that. But ultimately, when you ask someone, do you want to make the choice of where your child goes to school, or do you want some bureaucrat to make that choice for you? Parents want those options for themselves.
So I believe education freedom is very important. I'm glad that you brought up the fact that your kids have tried every angle of schooling and education, and they've been really through it all. I was homeschooled. I went to kindergarten in public school. I've done online school. I've done a little bit of it all as well. Done, the tutorials, the co-ops for homeschool, and I really appreciate it. But homeschooling for me is what worked the best. Like, I wouldn't be here on this podcast, at 18 and traveling if I weren't homeschooled. But I do encourage parents, and I'm curious your thoughts as a mom, 3 boys that have tried everything. What is your message to moms, to parents out there? Because I genuinely think, and obviously it depends on where you are financially, and if you can afford, or if you're, both parents are having to work, it's going to be challenging to homeschool. I still think it's possible. I've seen it happen before. But what do you say to the moms and dads out there that are just really tired of their kids coming home? Like you said, the proficiency in reading and math. I mean, you've got in New Jersey where teachers that can't even read are allowed to be teachers. Right. I mean, I don't know if you saw the testing that just went through in New Jersey that they passed the bill. It's crazy. It's absolutely insane. But what do you say to moms on a daily basis who are just really wrestling with the idea of, should I homeschool? Should I send them to public school? But I don't like what's in the public schools today.
Yeah, I have this conversation all the time. And if you feel like your child does need to be in a school environment for whatever reason, maybe it's just your family situation, you need to go and visit these different schools, whether that's a public school choice. If you don't have public school choice and you only have one option and it's not working, you have got to find a way to homeschool, or you have got to find a way to get them a scholarship or get them into a private school. Move if you have to. I mean, this is your top priority as a mom, is to take care of your children and to make sure they're in the best environment possible. And they're in school too many hours for you to overcome that at home. And so we have to start putting our kids first when it comes to these decisions. You have to pray about it, absolutely, and make sure that it's what God wants you to do. But if you're not in a school choice state and you really feel like you have one option and that option's not working, you've got to find something different, because your child's future is more important than whatever income that you're giving up, unfortunately. Hopefully, with all the work that we're doing, more and more states are allowing for school choice, and people are able to access that, either to help pay for some of the expenses of homeschooling or online school, or finding some flexibility to allow for online courses or hybrid or micro schools. There are more and more options out there that families, if you're looking, will be able to find something that is going to fit and find the funding for it. Where there's a will, there's a way. You've seen moms like move mountains, right, when it matters for their children. And it really is, because when your child is miserable and your child hates learning and they're not thriving, I think parents don't even realize how much it's affecting them as well, and their ability to do anything else in life when you're not really taking care of first things first. And so I think families, and moms especially, who put their children first, figure out what's best for their child, God's going to take care of the rest for you, whether that's income or your family situation. And we just have to follow God's leading on that. I can tell you this, God doesn't have a plan for your child to be miserable in school every day. That's not God's plan. So, and he doesn't put you in a situation where you are not going to be able to survive if you do what's best for your child. That's not God's plan either. So find what God's plan is for your life and for your family.
Yeah, and speaking of that, just kind of on the same vein, during your talk to the young women today, you talked about, kind of the concept of having it all and having a successful career, having kids, having a great marriage. And you said, well, oftentimes that was not the case at all. So I think young women are so concerned about this because they feel like they do have to choose. So how have you practically been a wife, a mom, and a person really devoted to her career?
Yeah, I talked about, and I do when I speak to young women, chasing that dream of being a corporate executive and having a lot of success that looked great on the outside. And it's what I thought was going to give me that fulfillment of success. But as I did that, and I was spending so much time away from home, away from my husband, away from my children, missing out on the things that should be most important to me, it looked like I had it all, and I really didn't. I was very empty inside. And God led me to leave my career and start something new. And perhaps had I done it right the first time and really stood up for myself and not allowed those boundaries to be overtaken with my career, maybe I could have done better in the career that I was in. But God was like, okay, that's enough of that. Let's start from scratch. We'll build something new. It was a huge risk for me to start my own business, but it did allow me the flexibility to be there for my family and build something that now has become a great career for me. But I think if I had in mind, I need to have these boundaries, I need to put first things first, regardless of what career it was, if it was in accounting or finance, or if it was the school choice policy work I'm doing now. What's important is not necessarily what that other thing is that God has for you to use your talents in, but that you maintain those first priorities of your family, your husband, and your children, and you keep that career, whatever that is, in its right level of priority. God will take that and he will make you successful in it, so long as you have those other priorities in place and you're not allowing it to overtake them.
So I'm actually kind of curious your thoughts on this because, growing up, I was homeschooled for the majority, other than going to kindergarten in public school. And I've always really cared about what was happening in the public schools, near me, and showing up to school board meetings and getting a lot of young people to show up and speak to our school board members to get prayer before school board meetings. And we were able to get that passed in our county here, or in Tennessee, not in Tennessee. And it's great. And I had some young people reach out to me and they're like, how do you juggle? And I'm actually kind of curious your thoughts on this, because while advocating for virtuous things in the public school system, yet still remaining homeschooled and encouraging people to actually homeschool or to choose other options, because I don't trust the public school system. yet still advocating for the kids that are still in public school. How do you, I mean, what is your message to the young students out there that are showing up to school board meetings but still wrestling with the fact, like, should I be here because we're trying to defund the educational system? You know, how do you wrestle with
Well,
that?
it's our tax dollars that pay for the public school system. So we have a vested interest whether our kids go there or not. It doesn't matter if you have children, don't have children, you're a taxpayer, and you either benefit or are harmed by whatever's going on in the public school as a community member. Whether you're young or old, doesn't matter. I got so much heat when I was on the school board because my kids didn't go to traditional public school. They were either in charter school or private school at the time. And people would be like, you don't have any skin in the game. No, I do, because all of these kids that are in the public school are my children's peers. They're going to be running these communities, running for office, owning businesses, you know, serving in our legislature and our military. So of course I have an interest in what's going on with them, not to mention that my tax dollars are helping to fund this organization. So absolutely have an interest. And as young people, this is the future for you all. And how those public schools are educating 80 to 90% of your peers is of great interest to you, whether it's you or not. And so you have every right to be there as an individual, just like you have every right to petition this is petitioning your government. It's literally in the First Amendment of the Constitution. Being at a school board member is one of your first, being at a school board meeting and advocating is your First Amendment right. Just like it is to go to the legislature on an issue that may not have anything to do with you personally, but is of interest to you as a citizen of your community, of your state, or of this country. So absolutely they should be involved, and even maybe more involved because you see it for what it is and you're not in it trying to defend the system itself.
Real quick, speaking about the petitioning your government, I just saw, literally I was looking at your X page 5 minutes before we started recording. You made this post about 9% of Americans do not know that there are 5 rights within the First Amendment. I believe that was the post that you made.
Yes, it was.
Wow.
And it's interesting, I was just at a Constitution class. I don't know if you know Dr. Carol Swain.
Yes,
she does a lot with the education. And, you know, they asked me to come coach this Constitution class, and I was in this little group, like we broke off into like groups of 20 students and these middle school students, and these middle school students knew more about the First Amendment and that we had 5 rights within, and they could name them all off. And these were homeschooled kids, like most of them, I would say like 85% were homeschooled. But it was crazy because I'm like, if you ask even most adults these days, they're like, oh, free speech, that's all. I don't know anything else.
Right.
And they probably don't know any other amendments other than the First and Second. So, I mean, talk about that too, just the education aspect of our country, people understanding the rights that are guaranteeing you these freedoms that you're being able to practice on a daily basis, yet have no idea how to even defend what has made this country great.
It's so critical, and I've been asked to co-chair the America 250 Civics Education Coalition in partnership with the Department of Education, Linda McMahon, and 40 other groups, Turning Point, Hillsdale College, Moms for Liberty, a ton of national groups that are joining this coalition to not only promote civics education and civic literacy across the country through events and lectures and things like that, but we're also going to have some policies behind that to say, okay, rah, everyone should learn civics, and it's really important for America 250, but what is going to carry us forward for the next 250 years to ensure that our young people can defend these rights? Because if you don't know them, you don't know how to defend them. You don't even know you have them. How are you going to stand up and make sure that they aren't withered away in legislation and whatnot? And so the policies could look like, and for me, I advocate for civics in every grade, every day in our schools, in our curriculum. A high quality civics education curriculum where it's on par, where we're paying attention to it just as much as we pay attention to reading and math, which again, we need to pay more attention to because we're not doing a very good job. But as we are focusing on making sure that students can read and do math proficiently and on grade level, we can't leave civics behind. It is so critically important, and especially the knowledge of our Constitution, why America is the greatest land that man has ever known on the face of this earth, and why it's so important to defend this republic.
That's right.
Yeah, I grew up in Fairfax County Public Schools, which is infamous, and it was 8th grade only civics, and I know that's pretty nationwide, but I think about people like you who had this background, and that's exactly what I want for my kids too. So. Thank you so much for all the work you're doing. We just have one final question that we like to ask all our speakers is, what advice do you have for young women today?
Well, definitely make sure that you focus on your relationship with God. That's the most important thing you can do right now. Know the word, let it get deep within inside of you so that when you need it, that word of God is really there. It's alive. It's able to help you in every situation that you have. And not just as a rote memorization thing, but really allowing it to be alive within you and listening to what God has for you in your life. I talked about it there, do devotions. I'm a big devotion freak, and self-help books, Christian self-help books. I love devouring that kind of advice, but nothing replaces getting quiet with God and letting him speak to you and speak to your heart in the way that only he can, because he knows you, he knows your personality, he knows your future, and he wants to help guide you through that every single day. I mean, that's really the best thing that you can do to avoid some of the pitfalls that I made in my life and getting off track or getting things in the way of your top priorities in life. Attending things like this and being involved and getting these relationships with other women who are like-minded is so amazing and critical, and such an important thing that I think your generation has that I did not have during that time in my life. It's something that will help you to build, not just those relationships, but it helps to get you closer to where you want to be and where God wants you to be. So I just encourage being involved in these organizations and keeping up these relationships as well.
That's right. How can people find you and support your work?
At Erika Donalds on all social media. As you know, I post a lot on the things that I really care about and the things that we're trying to focus on and do. Also going to be visiting a lot of college campuses this fall and in the spring, talking about education reform. Excited about that. So yeah, get in touch with me on social media.
Great. Thank you so much, Erika.
Happy to be here. Thank you.